What's good, YouTube? Yup, boy 21 here, bringing you guys an informational episode today. And the informational episode will be how to build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. And from what I've seen, a lot of people really don't know how to build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. So, in this series of 4 videos, today's video being the monster lineup, my next video will be the spell lineup. Third video will be the trap lineup, and my fourth video will be the side deck and extra deck. But for right now, this video we're just going to focus on the monster lineup. So, how to build your monster lineup for your Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Starting off, you want to know your ratios, and what about ratios? You have to know how many numbers of monsters you want to draw per turn. For example, if you run a high number of monsters, let's say 25 in a 40 card deck, you're having a little bit over more than a 50% chance to open up one monster per turn. If you say, let's say, where you run 15 monsters in a 40 card deck or 12 monsters, you have at least a 25% chance to open up one monster per turn. So you really have to see where you want to go when it comes to opening up monsters for the deck. And if you're running a basic 40 card deck, that's really easy. 10 cards is 25%. 20 cards would be 50%. 30 monsters would be 75%. And obviously 40 monsters would be 100% of the deck. So when you're sticking to those ratios, it's really easy to think, okay, if I run 10 monsters out of my 40 card deck, there's a 25% chance I'll open up with one, which is really good. If you run a 40 card deck, you run 25 monsters, about half the time you play your deck, you're going to draw your monsters, so you gotta really know where you want to stand by win ratio. Now, once you get that out of the way, you want to go by, okay, the deck you're playing. And you want to use any good card you're using for your deck, like for example, the theme of your deck. You want to use you want to use your good cards as the 3-ofs. Good examples of this will be in Bujins. Every Bujin player knows you must run 3 Yamato because Yamato is the best card in the deck. It makes the deck function. Another example will be Gear. Every Gear player will tell you you need 3 Gear armors for the deck to properly function. And if you're only having 3 of them, you're not going to open up with every game, but having more ups your chances of making your deck more consistent. And as far as the monster line continues to go, your maybe monsters, like the monsters, let's say for example, in the Gear Accelerator, I've seen people run 1 copy of it, I've seen people run 2 copies of it, and I've seen people more recently run 3 copies of it. So in monsters like that, like Gear Accelerator, where there's like a maybe factor to it, you want to start off as 2 of, just to see how consistent the card is with your deck and see where it goes. Another prime example of that will be for my gadget deck I currently run. Originally, Kage was a 2 of, and through testing and the release of King of the Pharaoh Realms, I had to bump it to 3 of, just for consistency purposes and the fact that it could be searched, and I want to get off my XYZ plays more than once. So it really takes testing to see where your right number is. But when it comes down to monsters that you're like, should I run this? I don't know. I always started off as a 2 of, because when you're starting off as a 2 of, you're not going to draw as much. And when you do draw it, you're going to know if it's worth deck space or not. Another thing I want you guys to focus on is the number ratio for monsters is going to be random. Like for example, in the beginning I said know your ratios of monsters that you want to start off with. But that does not mean that's the number of monsters you're going to have your deck with after testing. So after you get done with your testing with your deck, you're gonna know, okay, 25 monsters in my deck, a little bit over 50% chance of me drawing monsters. These hands are getting too clunky. Maybe I need to cut down my monsters by 3 monsters and up my spell trap count to add more defense. So you really want to know there is no specific number of monsters you should run. Every number of monsters decks is random, because decks like for example the old hero deck, it only ran 7 monsters with 3 searchers, well, like 6 different searchers, including Powder Duality, E-Call, and Reinforcement of the Army. So, and that deck worked out just fine. So you really have to know, you really just shouldn't put too much pressure on the number count for monsters. I always hear players all the time, Chris, how many monsters do you run? Chris, how many monsters should I run? And frankly, it really just depends on what fits your play style. What do you like to open into? How often do you want to open that card? It really all depends on you and through your own personal play testing. So don't really focus on the monsters too much. Just focus on getting that testing out of the way. So that way you know where you want your monsters to be at. Also, you always have to find out, use the process of elimination to know what works and what don't works for when it comes to building your monster. Like for example, I used to run Gigantus in my deck and during the Fire Fist meta. And quite frankly, when Fire Fist was pretty dominant, which was like almost a year ago now, it ran pretty smoothly. And then eventually towards that up and coming national season when Spellbook Judgment got released and the Dragons got released, it didn't work anymore. So through testing, I knew that it didn't work. So a good motto I like to follow is you find out what works and what don't works, and you separate the what don't work. So when you're playing your game and you have that one card, like every time I draw this card is bad, but the card by itself is good. If it's bad in your hand more than it's good in your hand, you really want to cut that card out. You don't want to keep cards in your deck because they're good. Like another example of this would be Rank Up Magic, the 7th one. Some people say it's bad. I think it's personally a good card, but me knowing that it's a good card doesn't necessarily mean I have to run it in my deck because it's a good card. It just means that it's a good card, and a lot of the times it's not going to work for me and what I'm trying to do. So you got to find out what works and stick to it, and what don't work and what's iffy, you have to take it out because it's not working for your deck. It's not making it more consistent. So you want to stick to what's working and what don't work, and if it's in in between, you keep it into the green. You keep it in the green until you find something else better. So finally, know your deck goal and stick to it. For example, if it's a combo based deck, you want to add speed. You want to add speed to your deck to draw into your combo pieces or searchability to make it more consistent. If it's a control based deck, you got to learn the base of your deck through testing until you find the best control cards that's going to work for you. If your deck is aggro, you have to play it as if it's aggro. You can't play, let's say, chain gadgets like I play and want to play a control. You're going to get smacked up by that because the whole goal is to go off and spam out your hand with gadgets and go for games. Sometimes you do have to stay back on the reserve, but you do want to play the aggro game and push for damage as much as possible for you to be in a winning factor. And you really shouldn't hold back on your aggro cards either if you're playing an aggro deck for slower cards. A prime example of this will be the recent released Soul Charge. I've tested the card out, and while I have won me a lot of games, I must say recently, now that this format has sped up, I had to take it out of my deck because it is frankly too damn slow for me to keep it up to keep up with today's meta. Because if I'm playing against Gear Gears, and even though some Gear Gears do play that card and they're spamming out their monsters left and right, and I'm playing a slower deck that can't really capitalize on Soul Charge like that, and when I do capitalize on Soul Charge, I can't make a big field and protect it, I'm gonna get beat. So you really just want to keep your deck aggro based and don't retain it with cards that's gonna slow it down. So as I said, finally, just make sure you find your deck goal out and stick to it. So once again, if it's combo based, make sure you have your searchability to make it more consistent. Patrick Hoban's a good example of this when he added 3 Upstart Goblins and 3 Reckless Geared and Mermaids because he knew it was a combo based deck, and he added all the draw power to make it more consistent. If it's a control based deck, let's say for example something running Skill Drain, you find out what works and you stick to it, and that's only through testing. Control based decks are weird like that. And like I said, if it's an aggro deck, don't hold back on the aggro cards. Play as many aggro cards as you can to see what's more consistent versus slower cards that's going to slow you down, or cards that make you have to wait a turn to do something. Alright, this is yugioh 21. This is yugioh 21 with how to build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Part 2 will be out later in this week, which will be the spell portion of how to build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It's going to be your spell lineup, not the trap lineup. Trap lineup is part 3. So if you guys find this video informational, Hit that like button, hit that thumb up button, and subscribe. This is Yellow 21 and I'm out. Deuces. Have a good day.